Good morning, everyone. It's Monday, and it's April 6th today, and we are in Holy Week. Yesterday we had Palm Sunday, and we did our worship service in the chapel because the sanctuary just echoes too much, and I feel bad about that. I really would prefer to live stream Sunday worship from the sanctuary, but the sanctuary just is without you folks in it, it echoes a considerable amount. Especially, it seems the microphone seems to pick up the echo, excuse me, even more so than what you hear it when you're actually in the sanctuary talking. But you can hear it when you're down in there. But so, at any rate, it does cause problem with doing the recording and live streaming. So we did it from the chapel. Today we are getting into, we're going to follow Jesus through Holy Week, and we're going to use the Gospel of Mark to do that. So we are in Mark, we're chapter 11, and we're going to look at verses 12 through 19 today as Jesus proceeds into the holy city again. The day before, Jesus had come on Palm Sunday. Appears to be that he must have been reasonably late in the day. It wasn't early morning, apparently, because it just says that Jesus entered Jerusalem and went into the temple. This is verse 11. After he had looked at everything, since it was already late, he went out to Bethany with the 12 apostles. And so he's gone back to Bethany, and based on more from John's gospel, we're kind of led to believe that he's staying with probably Lazarus and Mary and Martha, but we don't know for sure. But in John's gospel, we have just before he gets there the healing of Lazarus, and that's in Bethany. So, and there are folks that are very near and dear to him, so we kind of are led to believe that he's probably staying with those folks. But I'm not sure that's at all important today. So today we're going to have him going back into the city, and on the way he's going to pass a fig tree. And so let's listen. If you want to open your Bibles to the Gospel of Mark, again we are in the 11th chapter. It's a very short reading today, 12 verses 12 through 19. Again, Mark 11, 12 through 19. So Jesus entered Jerusalem and went into the temple. After he had looked at it, or excuse me, I'm starting at 11 there. Pardon me. Forgive, Pastor. Verse 12. The next day, which is Monday, as Jesus was leaving Bethany, he became hungry. Seeing a fig tree in leaf from far away, he went to see if it had any figs on it. But he found no figs, only leaves, because it was not the right season for figs. So Jesus said to the tree, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." And Jesus' followers heard him say this. When Jesus returned to Jerusalem, he went into the temple and began to throw out those who were buying and selling there. He turned over the tables of those who were exchanging different kinds of money, and he upset the benches of those who were selling doves. Jesus refused to allow anyone to carry goods through the temple courts. Then he taught the people, saying, "It is written in the scriptures, my temple will be called a house of prayer for people from all nations. But you are changing God's house into a hideout for robbers." The leading priests and the teachers of the law heard all this and began trying to find a way to kill Jesus. They were afraid of him because all the people were amazed at his teaching. That evening, Jesus and his followers left the city. So Jesus is in Jerusalem on that second day, I guess. We'll call Sunday the first day he's there. But this first day of the new week on Monday, he's causing some troubles already. Of course, he caused troubles with Palm Sunday, didn't he? Because his entrance into the city was definitely, if you want to call it that, a shot across the bow of the not only the Romans but the leaders of the temple. The things we have to be careful that we don't turn this into. We don't want to turn this into an anti-Jewish rant because it's not that Jesus is against the Jewish religion at all. He is, turning over the tables and all of that isn't about him saying that the temple per se is evil. He is using the word he's using there where it says a hideout for robbers is in the New Century version, New Century translation is what I'm reading, and that's a good translation because it's a hideout. Sometimes it says a den, But a hideout is exactly what he's getting at. It's a place where those that are robbing the people or misusing the system are hiding out. And so an accusation leveled towards the priest. And what is the problem with the high priest? Well, at this point in history, the high priests are very much collaborating with the Romans. And we can argue that they're doing that out of a need for survival. And that's a very real argument, and it's a very honest argument. Jesus, to the high priest's fear, to some degree at least, I'm sure they're afraid they don't want to give up the gravy train because they're doing all right dealing with the Romans and being in control. Especially the high priest himself at this point in history is being appointed by the Romans, which is not the way it was supposed to be. That's not who the high priest was supposed to be, was by a political appointment. That was not at all correct. And that's, of course, the problem the Essenes had. And this is why the Essenes left and went out into the desert, because they believed that the high priests at that time were false priests, that they were not the true priesthood. And they actually were probably correct. Probably they were correct. And there are some fringe scholars that believe that Jesus was an Essene. I'm not even, that's an interesting argument. I'm not sure I want to dive into that one today, though. It's possible. I think John the Baptist was an Essene. I agree with that argument. I think Jesus was a Pharisee. But I digress. The accusation here of turning over the tables and letting the doves loose, that's not those are not evil in and of themselves, because those people were serving a very real need, because people coming into the temple, as you've probably all heard, were coming from all over the world. I mean, at the time of Jesus and the Passover, it's estimated there were maybe 2 million people came to Jerusalem for Passover. That's amazing. And that's, of course, why Jesus is not staying in Jerusalem. He's staying in Bethany, which is just a short walk away, and probably staying with, again, Mary and Martha and Lazarus. The city swelled to bursting at that time. It's hard to believe, or for us to comprehend that, given they don't have modern facilities of any kind. It's really mind-boggling for us that are so soft and westernized. I mean, if our cell phones died during all of this quarantining, we're going to be going through conniption fits. Much less if we went somewhere and we didn't have proper toilets and running water. We'd really lose our minds. Can you imagine that? But I digress. The point is that those tables, those money changers, were needed to convert the currency that those pilgrims were bringing in from wherever they were at, because you certainly could not use coins that had images. You couldn't use foreign coins. You had to use temple coins. This was a requirement, and so they had to exchange the money, the currency, for temple coins. The point was that they were abusing their situation to profit from it. Not the function that was the issue, it's how the function was being managed. And this is very true in a lot of things in this world. The same with the animals, the doves. You really couldn't expect people to bring an animal from miles and miles away to the temple. For one thing, it might die on the way. It might get injured. If it gets injured, then it's not any good for a temple, because it's blemished. And also the priests have to inspect it. And if you've brought this dove, oh my word, there's a gray feather on this white dove, it's no longer acceptable as a sacrifice. You can't use that one. You're going to have to go buy one of ours. And that's part of the problem too, perhaps, is that they were being so critical of the animals coming in from the outside that they were forcing you to buy theirs at a market price. That's a possibility. But it's the collaboration, the corruption of the temple that Jesus is protesting here, which gets us to a sticky wicky, if so you could say. We've got a bit of a problem if we look at that. We can get ourselves in trouble today, because we look at the church today. If we look at society, the culture, being the occupying Roman Empire, is the culture. How much is the culture forcing the religious establishment to be in collaboration? I don't know that I want to step into that pool of mire today, but I think it's one that we should perhaps be thinking about. It's one we should have been thinking about already, but we need to think about it more. And you can't point a finger at any particular denomination. I don't think that's any worse than the other. I think that cuts across the grain. We've got a real problem, and we are letting the culture steer us much more than we should. Much, much more. And the fear is very real. We fear that they're going to kill us, and that'll be the end of the church. If we deviate, and you even see that amongst the ministers when you're at retreats and whatnot. You don't dare speak up against those that are in control. And that's the thing that Jesus is talking about. He's very much saying we need to stop this. We need to stop worrying so much about going along to get along. That's a message of Jesus telling us that's a little hard to swallow, and so we'll come back to that perhaps. But I'm not even going to touch on the fig tree today because that story is to be continued. Jesus, the message of the fig tree that actually speaks into the money changers and the overturning the tables and the cleansing of the temple. They feed off one another. Remember that old scriptural sandwich that I talked about the other day? It's right here. We only got top leaf. We got the top slice, and we got the meat, and we are going to wait till tomorrow morning to talk about the bottom slice. How's that one? So to be continued, as the old stories used to be. Remember that when you'd watch the show and it just get really good, and Batman or whatever it was, and all of a sudden you'd have the big words "to be continued" next week, and it's like, oh my word, we have to wait a whole week to find out. That was the old days with television shows. Today you Netflix and you just go through and they keep you going from one episode to the next, so you get stuck there, gorging on watching Netflix. But today you have to wait till tomorrow morning to talk about the bottom slice, and it will reflect back onto what we've talked about with the temple, and it's almost, again, Jesus likes to use exclamation points, and I think that is his exclamation point, because right now we're kind of left with Jesus being kind of a petulant little, throwing a little bit of a fit with the tree and with the temple. We got Jesus being what one, to use a colloquial term, snarky, and so we don't really like that picture of Jesus. So tune in tomorrow, and we'll talk about Jesus and why he's not really actually snarky, why he's really actually got a point here, and why he's trying to put an exclamation point to it. So with that, I'm going to make you wait till tomorrow. It is Holy Week, and it all runs together. So this story isn't one where we can cut it apart like we're trying to do. But we're going to look at it in bits and pieces and try to come all together at the end and understand what the message of Jesus in that last little bit and what he was trying to accomplish and what he did accomplish if we just let him. That's part of the problem. We don't always let Jesus accomplish what he was doing. So let's pray for this week and for some understanding. Spend some time reading the Gospel of Mark. You might want to start ahead of where we jumped in because some of those stories set the stage. And Mark's not a terribly long gospel. This is one of the reasons why Mark's gospel wasn't necessarily the most favorite gospel in the early church. Mark's gospel kind of was looked at as being kind of incomplete because it was short, and it doesn't have a post-resurrection story per se. So Mark's gospel was probably the least favorite of all of the four gospels, and in fact there is a gospel of Peter out there that is a non-canonical gospel, and actually it's believed that was more utilized than Mark's gospel. And I've talked about the gospel of Peter before. Unfortunately, we don't have an entire, not that I'm aware of, we don't have the entire text of that. We just have pieces of it. So with that, I will see you tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Don't forget that later this week on Thursday, we will have drive-through communion again at 5 to 5:30. and hope to see you for that. And it'll be Monday, Thursday. And I'm still trying to figure out, I'm wrestling with that Monday, Thursday service. So pray for me on that one for some insight on how to really get a good Monday, Thursday service done over live stream. I need some help with that one, and I appreciate you praying for me. Okay, go forth and be a blessing to someone today. And as I was going to say, go forth and bless. We'll see you in the morning. Bye-bye, guys.